This week on Instant Experts, judicial bombshells as the P. Diddy trial concludes.
And the jury apparently was on mushrooms the whole time.
Blonde bombshells as Sydney Sweeney and other randos gather for the $50 million wedding of the year. And in sport, the honk shares his tip for the state of origin decider between New South Wales and Queensland.
And I really think this could be South Australia's year.
Welcome back to Instant Experts Independence Day edition. It's all the latest news explained by idiots, independent of any expertise. And here to keep you sane in a crazy world. I'm Henry Lee, and as always, I'm here with my dear friend, the Honk. Honky, welcome.
Henry, fantastic to be here. What a pleasure, as always. And what a week. We say it every week. This is a show about crooks, fuckwits, and morons. And yet again, from all over the world, from every avenue of life, from politics to sport to entertainment, these people have made time in their busy schedules of fuckwittery for us all to enjoy.
They're good like that, aren't they? What caught your eye this week, my friend?
So many wonderful displays of clueless bananery. But the big story this week, though, to answer your question, is Puff Daddy. Is it Puff Diddy? Puff Daddy. Is it Diddy?
It was Puff Daddy, then it became P. Diddy, then it became Diddy.
Yeah, Diddy. So the big story.
His real name's Sean Combs.
Thank you. So the big story this week is P. Daddy / Diddy beating the rap.
Right. No pun intended, obviously. What was he charged with, Honko? Murdering every breath you take?
He should have been. Unfortunately, that is not a federal offence.
What are you talking about? He killed the police.
I'm sure Sting is not complaining given the royalties he's received. But the song, of course, you're referring to is I'll Be Missing You, right? The tribute to Biggie Smalls, direct rip-off of Every Breath You Take.
Which they didn't admit until they got sued, by the way, which is extraordinary. But anyway, I digress.
Wasn't that hard to work out, was it? Surely.
It was not. Point is that Puff Daddy / P. Diddy / Sean Combs beat the charges.
Here's what he was charged with. He was charged with three things: racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation for the purposes of prostitution across state lines. These are federal charges in the US, so they need some sort of interstate component.
Right, because drugging people at sex parties is a state matter?
No, I think because unless the US Constitution says it's a federal matter, it's a state matter, same as in Australia. And presumably also the first president, George Washington, was too busy fighting the English to turn his mind to sex trafficking regulations in relation to rappers.
Right. They wasn't thinking too far ahead in
1776,
was he? So did he beat all three of these charges, did he?
I think he beat 2 out of 3.
Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
You had to say it, had to be said. The jury felt that the prosecution did not sufficiently prove the existence of a criminal enterprise or a pattern of racketeering activity affecting interstate commerce.
Oh, right. There's that interstate component again. What about the sex trafficking charge?
The prosecution said Combs allegedly used manipulation drugs, threats to coerce individuals into sexual activities. And the defense said the participants acted voluntarily and questioned the credibility of the witnesses and the consistency of their accounts.
Was that because they were drugged at the time?
Well, yeah, presumably. Presumably that didn't help. But anyway, the evidence apparently did not meet the threshold to prove coercion beyond a reasonable doubt, which led to the acquittal on this charge.
But he did get done for prostitution?
Yeah, that's right. There was evidence from Cassie Ventura, a former girlfriend of his, another woman referred to as Jane, who alleged they were transported for these so-called freak-offs involving sexual activities.
Cassie Ventura, she was the girlfriend that he beat up on camera.
Yeah, that's right.
Lift, I think.
Which he denied, of course, until there was footage released. Yeah. So he was convicted on both counts in relation to the prostitution.
So that's a win?
In fact, he's claiming a win because he's only being done for prostitution, not sex trafficking.
That sounds like OJ getting done for armed robbery, but not murder.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine a world in which you're claiming a win for only prostituting drugged-out women for involuntary orgies? The big debate, of course, is people are wondering how the hell he got off the other charges, which is truly a mystery. Right. And, of course, you would normally know the answer, because usually they interview the foreman of the jury. Unfortunately, in this case, he was not available. It turns out he's holed up recording his new rap demo at Diddy's studio. By the way, should note he's a 350-pound white accountant called Terry, I think.
Biggie big. Does that mean Diddy's out of jail?
No, I think he's still inside. This is a good story too. He was going to apply for bail, but then he heard they were going to throw him a party in Cell Block H, and he figured he had to be there. It was beautiful because they really wanted to make him welcome. Turned it all on, like the baby oil, white linen, guest appearance by Justin Bieber, the works. Very thoughtful.
Dear me, delightful. Now, Honko, speaking of big trials, the jury is still out in the mushroom trial, at least as we record this.
Yeah, I mean, you can't rule out the old late Friday night verdict. That's right.
Do you reckon juries do the Friday dump as well? Just like the partners at law firms and consulting firms we used to work at used to dump work on us at 5 o'clock Friday night before they went to the beach house.
The case you're referring to is this case that's captured the attention not only of Australia, but this 50-year-old woman called Erin Patterson's been charged with 3 counts of murder and 1 of attempted murder because she killed 3 of her former in-laws with these death cap mushrooms, which she baked into a beef Wellington.
And the other one was in an induced coma for a month, I think, and recovered. Yeah. And so the prosecution claimed that the accused, Patterson, knowingly put the toxic death cap mushrooms into the home cooked meal. I mean, they're called death cap mushrooms, before lying to police and disposing of the evidence.
Patterson argued that she accidentally included the poison, like fungi, in the dish, and she only lied because she panicked after she realised she'd killed them.
They're the poisonous fungi that she allegedly Google searched.
So look, how do I kill people coming to lunch?
I haven't been following it closely, but it does seem pretty straightforward to me, Honko. But the fact that the jury has been out all week, basically since Tuesday, so 4 days, as we record, suggests that there might be disagreement.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing too. You could get the hat trick. I was thinking, right, like P Diddy for like host of the year, OJ for husband of the year, even though he's still dead, and Erin Patterson on MasterChef.
Honky, the mind boggles. Okay, we like to start with shout-outs to listeners. We've got loyal listeners all over Australia, of course, except Darwin.
Darwin.
Normally we get Australian listeners listed by city or town, but this week Hornsby came up, which is a suburb in Sydney. And that's come up on its own as a separate location. So congratulations, Hornsby.
Yeah, but what's going on there? Is there something they want to tell us? Like, is there secession plans maybe, like a bit of a civil war situation? Hornsby is the hottest I remember I ever was in my life. And I don't mean attractive, I mean melting.
Right.
An engagement party, which was held, I remember, on like a 45-degree day in Hornsby inside an airless plastic tent. And I actually don't think I've ever recovered. You know that jazz song, I left my heart in San Francisco? Like, for me, this was I left my shrunken nads in Hornsby.
Right. That was the slightly lesser selling cover version.
Yeah.
Honky, we have a regular listener in Thirlmere as well, I'd like to mention. That's just outside Sydney as well, but Hornsby is genuinely part of the metropolis. So
hello, Thirlmere. Yeah, hello, Hornsby.
Around the world, we're back in Tennessee this week, Honky. Last week it was Knoxville. This week it is Nashville, the country music capital, and indeed possibly the music capital full stop of the USA.
We went to Nashville together. Do you remember that?
I do. You told me, and this is a true story, you'd got tickets for the Black Crows and they were only $25.
That
I did. It was a bargain.
I did, and they were.
Yeah, except it was only then you told me the concert was in Nashville and we were in Sydney. So with airfares, it was $2,025.
Listen, you had a good time, didn't you? What do you want from me?
We've got plenty of locations in the UK, as always, including Batley in Yorkshire and Livingston in West Lothian, just west of Edinburgh.
Am I preparing myself for like a short history of Scotland over 6 big nights?
Hey, Braveheart. It's not a crime to learn something. But location of the week, Honk, goes to Paro. I had to look this one up, and it's in Bhutan.
Oh, wow.
Right up there in the Himalayas. And it's famous for its very tricky airport, which has a short runway, thin air, and 5,500-metre mountains either side.
I think it's great this person managed to get a whole episode of our show in before the plane went down. I think that's great.
Can you imagine having us as the last people you hear?
Oh, that'd be beautiful.
Make you want to kill yourself.
Indeed. Also, but I think it was the pilot. I also want to thank TikTokers who've got behind some of our clips in a really big way this week, especially one, quote, Rick Monkton, who told us, quote, "You guys are getting better every day. What a difference it makes now you got over your TDS and started posting some really good content." By the way, TDS stands for Trump Derangement Syndrome.
Honky, could this Rick Monkton fellow be the famous at Rick2211606511 who was heaping it on us a couple of weeks ago and indeed accusing us of TDS?
Yeah, intriguing theory. It could be, although I actually have a suspicion this could be a totally separate other Rick.
How many guys called Rick are there out there, Honko?
I imagine there are more than we can possibly imagine. And I don't know about you, but I'm terrified.
I'm terrified there are Ricks going across state lines. Honky, we've also got an apology this week. Last week, we asserted that heroin production in Afghanistan had taken over from production in the Golden Triangle up in at the top of Thailand there. But listener, the Donkey Man got in touch from New York City with a message to the effect, another excellent episode, albeit a gross factual violation, unquote, on heroin production and a poke in the eye to the Taliban. And the point he was making is that the Golden Triangle has seized back the heroin production crown from Afghanistan, specifically Myanmar expected to produce about 1,080 tons this year, which is 3x Afghanistan's 330 tons.
What brought that on?
Well, the Taliban banned opium production in 2022.
Always a Taliban.
And Myanmar is dirt poor, so growing opium poppies turns out to be a pretty good way to make a living comparatively. And also they're using it to fund a civil war in the usual style.
Of course, that's the one between some people and some other people about the thing they did that time.
That's exactly right. Although, to be fair to us, Honko, the Donkey Man did make a typo. The actual message was another excellent episode, albeit a gross factual violation on heron production.
Are you sure he didn't mean heron?
Well, if he did, he's completely wrong because we looked into it, didn't we?
We did look into it. Oh, yeah. So this is what it so happens.
The global hotspots for heroin production are nowhere near Myanmar, are they?
They're not. In fact, I'm so glad this era came up because it so happens that heron production around the world, heron breeding, is one of my secret passions. I don't know if I've ever told you that. So let's talk about this. This Donkey Man needs to learn a thing or two about international heron breeding. All right. Here's what you got. You got your Sundarbans. Everyone knows those from India and Bangladesh. So there you're talking about like your purple herons, your grey herons, and your black crown night herons, obviously. I mean, that's 101, right? Then you got the Florida Everglades, right? 101. Yeah, that's good. Then you got Florida Everglades, right? Now there you got your great blue herons, your tricolored herons, little blue herons. Yeah, little blue herons and obviously green herons. I mean, obviously.
How do they stay out of the mouths of the alligators?
I don't know those. Listen, I said I'm a heron expert, not a crossbreed alligator expert.
It pays specialized, doesn't it?
Yeah, specialized. And then you got your Danube Delta, so that's Romania and Ukraine. And there you got your grey herons, your squawko herons.
Is that one of Europe's largest wetlands?
I think it might be. So listen, I'm trying to teach you something here, okay? You got your grey herons, your squawko herons. Famous squawko herons, night herons, and little egrets. And then you got Pantanal in Brazil, and that's where my notes run out.
and the list goes on. So there you go. So appreciate that, Honky. It was so handy for you to be able to grab Gould's Book of Birds right off your shelf, wasn't it?
Might be more accurately ChatGPT's Book of Birds, I think.
Yes. I'm sure the Taliban won't be happy about losing not only the heroin title, but losing the heron title. That's, heron's one thing. Heron's entirely another.
Surely they haven't banned heron, have they? The Taliban? I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. But
no, they'll be wanting to win it back. They'll be calling for rooting in the rookeries.
They want heron production to skyrocket next year.
They want birds all over town.
Yeah. Are we allowed to do any more of the actual show in the couple of seconds we got left? Or is that all the time we have?
I enjoyed the heron. What are you talking about?
Me too. I loved it. It was great. Yeah.
Okay, Honko. Now that the heron have flown south for the winter or north for the winter.
Yeah, and back again.
Yeah, except for the squawko herons.
The squawkos. Don't get me started on the squawkos. Mate, the squawkos. It's a whole other story. Forget it.
Okay, what's happening in the Middle East?
Well, this was the focus of last week's episode, but the news this week is that there's no news.
Right. Is this the longest streak of Middle East peace? And when was the last time they had a week off? 3000 BC?
It's got to be, yeah. But there's always a big question, right?
Yeah, is it a new dawn, or are they just going back to reload, getting ready to invade someone else?
I think it's actually real. I mean, even Israel and Hamas, the reports seem to be close to a ceasefire deal.
Yeah, although to be fair, there's only 3 members of Hamas still left.
So this is like sort of restaurants in Sydney that just can't get the staff, right? Can't get the staff, mate.
They have had some WH&S issues at Hamas HQ.
Look, I want to give Hamas credit. They've got a lot of ticker. I think it's great Hamas still hate and want to kill every Jew on earth.
Yeah.
But, at the same time.
Yeah, they've got to put themselves and their well-being first.
Do you reckon you can get mental health leave when you're a terrorist?
Yeah, I live in Melbourne. Can you get cup day off? Do you get the day off before grand final day?
I've heard there's only 2. We looked into this just moments ago. I think there's only 2 places in the world where you do get cup day and the day before grand final day off. One is Victoria, and the other bit is northern Gaza.
There hasn't been any Trump yet this week. Is he going to make an appearance, or is he at the week off as well?
Look, it is not a very Trumpy episode, as some of our online commentators will be glad to hear. But he has had quite the week. I mean, he's been busy. There's a commentator online called Ron Filipowski who put it well. He said, quote, in the last 24 hours, Trump's threatened Elon Musk, Thomas Massey, Japan, a judge in Israel, the CEO of AT&T, Canada, Tom Tillis, a Forbes reporter, Harvard, and migrants being eaten by Burmese pythons in the Everglades, all while releasing a new line.
Watch out for the herons.
All while releasing a new line of colognes.
There was one thing in Trump's week that you didn't mention. Congress has finally passed the One Big Beautiful bill, which we talked about in detail on the show a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, this is the one that apparently is going to add $3.3 trillion to the US national debt over the next decade. Put in perspective, that is the wealth of Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and the next 20 richest people on Earth combined.
And that's before Jeff Bezos' next divorce.
Yeah, indeed. Although more on that later. I was, though, amused to hear apparently these conservative Republicans have been referring to the big, beautiful bill as the BBB. Can you imagine the tension on the autocorrect on these conservative Republican politicians?
Yes, they're all secretly dirty, aren't they? And the last B, it's so close to a couple of other acronyms, isn't it?
Yeah, the C, the W.
Seriously, if they don't get the deficit under control, pretty soon BBB will be the US's credit rating.
Yeah, that's true.
They've already been downgraded from AAA to AA plus because of their debt and deficit position.
What's the scale again?
Well, there are different ones for different rating agencies, but the Fitch one starts at AAA and then goes AA, A, triple B, double B, etc.
These are still credit ratings we're talking about, right?
Yes, they are. Don't get too excited. There's no double D, honko.
Yeah.
You juvenile. It goes straight from C to D, and then you're in default.
Right, I knew that. I mean, that's finance 101. I mean, if you know Herons, you know finance. But my question is, if your credit rating is BBC, is that a good or bad credit rating? Does that mean you have a huge credit score, or does that mean you're about to be a mighty deep hole in your finances? I'm just not sure.
I'm
just wondering. I'm not the economist expert you are. That's why I'm asking. I want to know.
I'm not sure I can answer that.
Surely.
All right, let's keep moving. What else have you got?
Well, isn't it time for Australian news, surely? This is one of yours. You told me about.
I didn't tell you this one. I'm dying over here. I can't talk.
Okay. Well, first up, let me pick up. First up, it's a quickie, which I think can be summarized as actual fucking snake on an actual fucking plane. So this story is, there's a virgin.
Was it a BB snake? Oh.
I think it was a regular snake, which is bad enough. So there's a Virgin Australia domestic flight from Melbourne was held up. The story is when a rather long
snakes.
Oh, no, shut the fuck up. The story goes, do you want to hear the story or not? Listen, the Virgin Australia flight from Melbourne was held up when a rather long snake was spotted by passengers on the plane. And it turns out it had slithered into somebody's luggage. And then when the coast was clear, the snake slithered back out on the plane.
Is this true?
True. It's in the papers, yeah.
Right. And where was the flight to?
Going to Queensland.
Right. So, the snake would have known a few people.
Yeah, I reckon maybe the snake figured that, like, the plane, but they're going to Queensland from Melbourne, it might be full of drunk women going on holidays, and the snake might have a shot. I will say, Virgin has tried this, your flight's delayed because of the snake on board bullshit before.
Instead of just saying, we suck.
Yeah, we fucking suck, yeah. But this time, nobody will leave them, right? Because they're always claiming their flights are delayed because of loose snakes. But this time it was actually true. Anyway, the bottom line is the snake got nothing from nobody. The snake had to go home on his own. And the snake hasn't even got hands. It's not good. The poor snake. Who's thinking of the snake in all this?
Well,
that's not the big story. Tell us the big story this week from Australia.
Yeah, my big Aussie story of the week involves a friend of the show and the alleged Prime Minister of this great nation, Anthony Albanese.
But in all seriousness, we talked before about mental health and and well-being. Albo, if you're out there, drop us a line or a voicemail so we know you're still alive.
Albo, as you know, trades a little bit on his image as a former youthful inner city hipster to sort of get in with the kids. He publicised his top 10 all-time songs for Triple J.
This is like the Aussie, one of the ABC's Aussie radio stations for sort of formerly youthful inner city hipsters, right?
That's right. There were people who were 20 in 1990 who are now 55, like him.
Yeah.
And the list is pretty much what you'd expect from a child of the 70s and a youth of the 80s. So it's, got your Cold Chisel, Flame Trees, it's got Midnight Oil, Beds Are Burning, Paul Kelly, How to Make Gravy, Nod to the 90s with UMI, Purple Sneakers, etc., etc. And his number one, of course, was Am I Ever Going to See Your Face Again by the Angels.
Yeah, it's a classic. Didn't offer that as his thing about Dutton, didn't he?
It was his parting shot to Dutton, and the electorate gave Dutton the traditional response, i.e., no way, get fuck off. But the best thing about the list was the article in The Guardian about the list.
Oh, yeah.
Which was the most Guardian article of all time. And I want to just share a couple of quotes.
Please.
There's nothing surprising about Albanese's choices, assuming they are honest and not chosen to burnish the everyman credentials of a man who grew up in public housing and is now the happy owner of multiple homes. So there's a bit of Guardian. It's cool to be poor, be successful.
Yep.
Not that there's anything wrong with his choices either, brackets, he's about to tell you what's wrong with them, close brackets.
Yeah, of course.
And here we go. Here's the kicker. Otherwise, there is little stylistic, cultural, or gender diversity. The music is entirely guitar-based and the songs are all written by men. There are only 2 women among Albanese's list of artists, the go-between's drummer and Spiderbait's bass player. What did surprise me was that Albanese's list is entirely white. Leaving aside Midnight Oil's Beds Are Burning, no song speaks from Indigenous experience.
Is that possibly because Alvo's a white guy from the inner west and not a black guy from Arnhem Land?
Exactly. He's an Italian from Marrickville. Why would he writing about the old country and Uluru and so forth?
Yeah.
Did they consider the possibility he was just picking the songs he actually likes?
Yeah, and the other thing I love about this stuff from The Guardian, I love this paper, is that all this criticism about how it was, not gender diverse and it was incredibly, male, of course came from, did it come from a diverse female journalist? Of course not. It came from a male journo with the wonderfully diverse name Andrew Stafford, which, as I say, is super Guardian. The great thing about The Guardian is one rule for them, one rule for everybody else.
I mean, this is just Inner West Karen 101, isn't it? Should I write to The Guardian and see if I'm allowed to like the songs I like? Because I, like you, like a lot of Black American music, soul, funk, blues, etc.
Sure.
Plus a lot of Black American music performed by white English guys like the Stones and Led Zeppelin and so on. So is that okay?
Oh, Henry, I think you're fine. That's cultural appropriation. You need to check your privilege.
Exactly. Honky, it's probably a good segue to entertainment news. There's a big story this week, which we alluded to at the top of the show, which is the founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, got married again this week.
And he married his future ex-wife.
And now she is a former TV host, a Fox News host, actually, named Lauren Sanchez.
She's the one at Trump's inauguration, wasn't it? Zuckerberg was caught on camera, photographed, checking out her boobs.
Yeah, she is, and he was.
We all know, Venice famously is sinking. But now with Lauren Sanchez there, plus plenty of like-minded guests like Kim Kardashian, the word is it's actually rising again. Basically, that wedding, they basically brought in 100 specially injected silicone floats for the weekend, right?
I heard Sydney Sweeney was at the wedding too.
Well, she's your more environmentally friendly version. She's sort of natural, isn't she?
Oh, that's right. Sydney Sweeney saving the planet once again.
Yeah.
One horny teenager at a time.
/ middle-aged man, yeah.
Now, Honk, how long do you give the marriage? Now, remember, Jeff Bezos was married before to Mackenzie Scott, who helped him found Amazon in the early 90s. And this is Lauren Sanchez's third go-around. So she was previously married to a Hollywood agent, and she also had a child with an NFL player, or a former NFL player, Tony Gonzalez.
I'm not sure I like what you're implying, Henry. I'm sure they are madly in love. I mean, why else would you ever spend $50 million on a wedding? There's not a hint of overcompensation in that, is there?
No. I suppose he's worth 230 bills, so he can afford it. But his first divorce cost him 4% of Amazon, so he doesn't want to make a habit of it, does he?
Yeah, actually, I've got to say, if I may, Henry, I've actually got one of these stories too, and in fact, it is a sports story.
Wow.
Yeah, not only that, this is actually State of Origin themed. The State of Origin, of course, being a huge grudge match in one of the 3,000 codes of football we play in Australia, namely Rugby League or NRL.
And Origin 3 is this week, Honk, the decider. I totally missed this story, so I'm impressed.
Don't get too excited, actually. I take it back because it's a very sad story. It's a tale of young love, lost love, heartbreak, tears, and yet it is also a cautionary tale.
All right, I'm intrigued, Honk. I'm ready.
Okay, so about 6 months ago, there's a Queensland men's player called Hamas Tabuai Fidau. Have I got it right?
Yeah, yes, the Hammer. Yeah, good player.
Yeah, and that's just on the field. Anyway, 6 months ago,
right.
6 months ago, the Hammer announced he was in a relationship with the New South Wales women's Origin player called Jamie Chapman.
She's the winger. Yeah, good
that's right.
Player.
Yeah,
also that's a beautiful thing. I mean, that's a male and female footy player. New South Wales and Queensland. This is like Sly and the Family Stone of relationships.
Well, it's true. It was, and it was going beautifully until he made one little mistake she can't forgive him for, which is that he allowed himself, this is all he did wrong. He allowed himself to be filmed and be identified by his tattoos and by his face while getting a BJ from a girl he had just met in a club.
That's not good.
No,
that is cautionary indeed.
Yeah, indeed.
And, forgive the, tasteless question, but do you think it'll affect Queensland's preparation for Wednesday night's game? Because this story, it's just broken. It broke this week, right?
Yeah. I don't think it's going to affect Queensland's prep for Wednesday night. I think the word is that they're all very relaxed. I think.
Now, speaking of rugby league, it might be time for the actual sports report. And before we get to the big stories, I can report, well, I can barely speak, but I can report the West Tigers lost again.
I cannot believe they lost again. What is going on?
Yeah, so that brings the losing streak to 6 for those following at home. And now we're tantalizingly 2 points off the bottom of the ladder, which is currently anchored by the Gold Coast Titans.
You know, the Titans, the problem with the Titans, they really haven't been the same team since they changed their name, have they?
Right, from the Gold Coast Seagulls.
No, the Gold Coast Strippers. Were they the Strippers? The Gold Coast Strippers, they were dominant in the 90s. They didn't lose a Bucks night for years.
Anyway, as Tigers fans, our eyes are already turning to a potential wooden spoon bowl versus the Titans on the last Saturday of the season, which is September the 6th.
Isn't the grand final in October?
No, Tigers fans, Honko, don't acknowledge the existence of finals football. We haven't played it since 2011, so it's cricket season at that point.
I see, gotcha. What about the AFL, which is another one of our codes, Aussie rules? You live in Melbourne. That's the sport in Melbourne, AFL. Dare I ask, how'd you go with your tipping at the Morningstar Hotel?
Oh, Honky, I thought you'd never ask. The good news is I tipped the round. The bad news, so did everybody else. So I'm still running second, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, the good news is that I did not tip the round.
How did you not tip the round? All the favourites won, and most of them won easily.
I don't know what went wrong. I tipped the Richmond bars, the Carlton restaurants, and the Melbourne major events, and they were all very disappointing.
That's a bit harsh. Melbourne is the hospitality and events capital of Australia, Honk.
Yeah, but those footy teams are shithouse. I'll tell you this, I've got high hopes for this week. I've got some high hopes. I've got high hopes for the West Coast Sunsets, the Adelaide Early Nights, and the Brisbane Rivers.
Isn't it the Port Adelaide Early Nights?
No. I think it's the Adelaide Early Nights. Isn't it the Port Adelaide Pub Brawlers?
Okay. Is there any actual real sport this week, Honk?
There probably is, but the story that actually caught my eye is only sort of sports adjacent. It's about this Aussie guy who's one of the top tennis umpires in the world.
Right, so he'd be at Wimbledon this week, wouldn't it? Because that's just started.
That's the thing. I'm so intriguing. This is why you're a brilliant guy. You've asked the pertinent question. This guy decided to skip Wimbledon to watch the cricket with his brother in the West Indies.
Oh, I love that. He's my kind of guy, yeah.
His name is John Blom, and he's umpired over 100 Grand Slams, apparently including over 25 Wimbledons, but he had never watched cricket in the West Indies.
Right, and the Aussies are touring there for the first time in 10 years.
Yeah, so he decided to go with his brother.
Yeah, I guess you've seen 25 Wimbledons, you've seen them all. But that's very cool. I've been there twice for the cricket myself, and it's amazing. Well worth it.
Tell me the story. Dare I ask you to tell me the story?
Well, I went in 1999 for the fourth test in Antigua, and Brian Lara made 100 off 82 balls and got out just as I had to go to the airport. So that was a big win.
I've heard of Brian Lara, yeah.
And I went to Trinidad with my father and my sister in 2003, and I was hoping to see Lara get another 100, one at his home ground, but he was bowled by Brad Hogg, 90-something. Still annoyed by, and he got 100 in the second innings, but I'd gone back already.
Did you fly over from Australia for these matches both times?
No, I was in the US. First time I was working, second time I was at business school, and I took a couple of days off class because I figured I'd never otherwise get to Trinidad.
Fair enough.
And most of the lecturers were pretty good, except for one. I got a C for women in management because apparently I wasn't taking the class sufficiently seriously. And the professor was an Australian too, so I wasn't. I was a bit disappointed by that.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
How would you know who taught women in management in 2003 in California?
Henry, I think you'll find it was me and West Karen, and I really didn't take kindly to going to the cricket instead of going to class. It was classic young white male behaviour. I wrote a very stern letter to the Guardian, and I felt very marginalised. So again, you can check your privilege.
That is exactly who it was. Touche. All right. That's surely all we have time for. Thanks.
You don't want to hear any more of my. You don't want to hear any more of my inner West Karen.
Yeah, Warren Zevon. Thanks for listening, everyone. Find us in all the usual locations, especially TikTok and Instagram. We post a few times a week now. Please share the show with friends. That helps us a lot. And rate us on the podcast platforms, ideally 5 stars.
And try to get a look at our show notes if you can, which are on every platform where you listen to the show. From there, you can send us a text, which we can read on the show from our show notes. You can leave us a voicemail directly from our show notes. Just follow the link. And again, if you get a chance, try to read our show notes. In case you might see some more jokes that, if you can believe it, are somehow dumber than the ones we actually do on the show.
Maybe that's what that pilot in Bhutan was reading. Went down.
Yeah. Classic rookie error. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll be back next week at the usual time. But to take us out, a little audio, as we usually do.
Yeah, now this is normally I find the audio, but this is one you found for us. Talk us through it.
This is from a Colorado appeals court last week.
Diddy trial?
No, not the Diddy trial, but similarly, there were 3 separate issues, as you'll hear. And in the heat of the questioning from the female judge, the lawyer, trying to get his point in, managed to call the judge honey.
Oh, my God.
And chaos ensued.
This reminds me of the kid on YouTube. You ever heard the kid Linda Honey on YouTube?
No.
The 3-year-old, there's a kid, it's a hilarious video with this kid, and like he's clearly just repeating what he's heard his dad say. The mum's busting him for being a little shithead, and he's saying, Linda, honey. He's saying like a little 3-year-old boy, Linda, honey, you're going to give yourself a heart attack. Nothing's worth getting that upset about. Linda, honey. She goes, I'm trying to send you to your room. And he goes, Linda, honey, you're going to have a stroke already.
Right. Anyway, so this lawyer put his foot in it, and I assume he took out the Japanese ceremonial sword afterwards and did the honourable thing over the white towel.
Unless, of course, Trump immediately made him the new head of the Equal Opportunity Commission, which I assume has got to be a possibility, right?
Well, that's possible too. So anyway, enjoy. We'll be back next week at the usual time, early Saturday morning, Aussie Eastern Standard Time. Back next week because stupid never sleeps.
It really doesn't. Thank you for your company. See you next week.
Pursued it, but this could have been 3 separate.
Okay, but it wasn't 3 separate. Let's go with what happened in the case.
But honey, oh my God, I'm sorry, Your Honor. That I don't know what to say to that. I apologize.
Okay, go ahead.
The question here is what happened. I'm sorry, I've just been totally thrown by
I
my
can
mistake.
imagine. I can imagine. I'm a little thrown by that also, if I'm being honest.
Your Honor, I don't know what to say. It's just
Okay, well, go ahead. You've only got 1 minute and 7 seconds left.
The question here